If you're the type of person who really wants to understand the Bible better, then you've come to the right place. And this starts with understanding how the Bible is divided, because the Bible is divided into sections. Now, most people have heard the terms Old Testament, New Testament, but the best way to understand what the Old Testament is to remember that the Old Testament is broken down into 5 sections. You have the Torah, the historical books, wisdom literature, major prophets, and minor prophets. Today, we're going to talk about the second section, the historical books. This includes 12 scrolls or books, and those are going to include Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, a lot of 1st and 2nds, am I right? Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. Now, the purpose of the second section of the Old Testament is to really hone in on this historical saga that the Israelites are going to go through. Because we're going to watch as the Israelites, who we met in the Torah, I want you to remember, these were God's chosen people. They're going to become 12 powerful tribes that all unite and turn into a major world power. They're going to form a single kingdom, and eventually we're going to follow along as that kingdom divides and then falls to major world powers, like the Assyrians and Babylonians. But at the very end of the historical books, we're also going to find some hope. So what happens in these 12 books? I want to take a look at it from a 30,000-foot view. First up, Joshua, Judges, and Ruth, the first 3 books. Now, if you remember, at the end of the Torah, Moses is passing the baton to Joshua, who's going to lead the Israelites into conquering the Promised Land and dividing it up amongst the tribes. But then some time has passed. It's years later, and now we're in the book of Judges. A new generation has arisen, and they've turned away from God. They end up getting oppressed, so God sends judges to deliver them, only for them to fall away again. It becomes a repetitious cycle. Now, right in the middle of that chaos, in that time period, is where the book of Ruth sits from a timeline perspective. It's a mini story about a Moabite woman who sticks by her Israelite mother-in-law. She ends up saving the family line and becomes the great-grandmother of King David. I mean, talk about a super cool sub-story. Then we're going to hit 1st and 2nd Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings, which these 4 books sort of work together. The Israelites decide they want a king just like all the other nations, and through the prophet Samuel, who's also the last judge, they go ahead and they pick King Saul. Now, this is the first time that the 12 tribes are finally under one ruler. Now, after Saul, you get the story of the legendary King David, David and Goliath, then David's son Solomon, wisest person in the world, and after Solomon, the 12 tribes can't agree and they end up splitting. The northern tribes become the kingdom of Israel, and the southern tribes become the kingdom of Judah. And we're going to follow these 2 kingdoms as they eventually fall to the superpowers of the day, the Assyrians and the Babylonians. And then we have 1st and 2nd Chronicles. Now, 1st and 2nd Chronicles really is just a retelling a lot of what we've talked about from a different perspective, which we're going to talk about in another lecture. After the Babylonians have put the Israelites into exile and banished them from their land, that's where we find the books of Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther from a timeline perspective. Once again, it's years later after they've been put into exile. The Persians are now the new world power, and the Persians let the Jews return back home. Now, the book of Ezra is going to tell us about the first group of Jews who are going to go and start rebuilding the temple. And then Ezra ends up being a character who's a scribe that brings back the law to the people. After Ezra is the book of Nehemiah, and this picks up right after the temple is finished. And Nehemiah, he's focused on a mission to help rebuild the city walls of Jerusalem where the temple is. And lastly, Esther, which tells a super cool little sub-story about a Jewish queen in Persia who's going to save the Jews from annihilation. And that's a 30,000-foot, very quick 4-minute lecture to help you better understand what the historical books are and how that section is organized. Now, if you have a deep desire to learn about the Bible and God, I want you to come back every week. Like and subscribe, follow us on YouTube and TikTok. Don't just go to church, don't just pray, do it all. Dig into the Bible, find out all the amazing things about the Creator of the world, because at the end of the day, we're all flawed, but we have faith that God can still do great things with us.